Okay, so this is a chart for single people. What does it mean? It means well, if I'm honest, I haven't finished reading it. I got to the very first all-time high and decided I may as well just start recording and see how this microphone feature works. I have looked at this chart before, a number of possibly months ago at this point. We'll just say a fair number of days at this point. And yeah, I was thinking that maybe it could end up going bearish at some point. Which, I mean, that would be a nice thing, right? I mean, we don't want everybody being single. This is possibly one of those charts that you don't necessarily want it to go bullish. Anyway. So, looking at this chart again in a macro sense for the first time in a while, the first thing that I notice is it starts at a horizontal channel arise from something. There's only so much data here, but it's mostly flat and somewhat volatile. Somewhat. Volatile towards the single side of things. It does look like in order to make a breakout towards being single, it first chose to make some kind of possibly double top, followed by a grab of support to get above that breakout region. Which would possibly be a nice trade. However, would it pay off? Well, it would be quite a trade, wouldn't it? It might just be one of those trades that you get kind of to the point that you're just like, I'm going to go somewhere else for right now. What does that mean for this? We'll figure that out later, I suppose. This is what I will say. This particular chart, having some stability in general and being what I just described, is probably something that you want, because you don't want people being single and not single, then single, then not single, then single. You get it? So, um, that's probably a nice thing. Um, so it is interesting that it actually did find support first in order to actually break out. I suppose I shouldn't entirely be surprised, considering how stable this thing is. It continues on to find a double bottom on that original jump in single sort of volatility. Now what's interesting here is that it does start to get a little excitable here. And that's when it goes for its first high. Now what is very interesting here is that it stops at somewhat of a unusual high. And this is where I started thinking, why did it stop there of all places? Why didn't it at least hit something a lot closer to 99 or so %? And then I realized that it's doing a very safe thing. It actually took what I am perceiving to be the bottom to bottom of a diagonal channel. You can call it bearish if you want to. I'm not necessarily going to call it bearish just because it's a rising channel. Anyway, if you channel that and you take the two bottoms, the two macro bottoms, and then you find the high of that. If you were to take that line and then take another one and move it to the top to create a channel, you're going to get about where that high is. Now, looking at this in a little bit more detail at this point, that's still a little bit volatile as far as I can tell. It looks like it would have made an overside test, which is interesting. It's like there's calmness, but there's also some volatility here. So in other words, excitement if you like being single, I suppose. But that was whenever that was. Because we still have more chart to look at here. Oui. Aye. Oui. Aye. Anyway. Now what's interesting is this is where the chart begins to change its behavior a little bit. And going back to look at this horizontally, And it went from a volatile period, quite a volatile period actually, to a smooth gradient of consolidation. And really, as far as I can tell, the most responsible thing to do at this point is to look at this as a horizontal. And in that sense, it came down quite low. So, in regular terms, I guess that means that people were suddenly going from being very single to a lot of people getting in relationships, and apparently people were possibly stubborn about being in relationships for a while. But apparently they didn't last for too long. This is a little concerning. So, yeah, after people were pretty persistent about being in relationships, it looks like it has a pretty quick breakout relative to what's been going on recently here. Back into volatility, and wow, come to look at it at this point, it's like similar volatility, and wow, where did it come from this time? Where did that volatility come from this time? Because that looks like an underside test to me. That looks like an accumulation. An accumulation where it picked up power and went. So what do you take from that? People really don't like being in relationships. Assumptively. Assumptively. So yeah, everybody decided they wanted to be single again. Everybody, whatever. Yeah, I guess so. Anyway, sort of. Something along those lines. It looks like a higher high, and yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and call that a higher high. It's not comfortable calling that a higher high because of how involatile things became. I would be tempted to challenge calling it that, even though it technically would have been that, possibly. Looks like it anyway. So it looks like people have decided that they really like being single up to this point in the chart. I mean, there's a whole support test with a double top coming. That's what it looks like. Now this is a macro sense. Once we zoom in on this, we'll see more detail of what's going on. the reason I'm looking at this chart is because you gotta wonder if you can extrapolate this data and see if possibly dating apps are of value right now. I mean, a lot of people are single, right? So why not? Why not chart our way to finding out where to go to well, I hesitate to say it, but to short this thing, because going long on this means being single. And looking at it from that point of view, I actually just realized how much I like this chart. Because, I mean, assumptively, this is gonna correct at some point, which in other words means people are gonna inevitably end up in relationships again. That's the guess. Anyway, yeah. But now that I'm really looking at it, even from this sense, the big picture, I guess, if you want to call it that. Um, 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 um. This is the type of chart that really decides it wants to go the other way pretty soon.